I suppose it's now time to bring out my two main guests, Formula One royalty, two world champions. So Jackie and Damon, how are you both?
I turned to my elder. I let Damon start.
No, I was going to let you start, Jackie. Come on.
Well, it's been such good. You know, it's a great thing because of Damon. I've known him since he's been a puppy. Because I was the number two, very much the number two driver at BRM, and Graham Hill, of course, was the number one. So I used to get down from Scotland to test at Snetterton, and I would spend overnight, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 nights sometimes, at their home, and then drive up to Snetterton with Graham. And that little fella there used to waken me up with his two, actually, there was 3 in the family, and they were all very difficult. The 2 girls, I mean, I got wakened up by getting thrown around in my bed. No wonder he's leaving.
You've offended him.
Because
no, I'm trying to find this picture. I wasn't going to do it, but there's a picture somewhere in a book we have of me climbing, or both me and my sister climbing on the top of Jackie's back. But it'll take a while to find it. There's a picture of my dad playing conkers with Jackie, though. So all that sort of stuff, yeah. But yeah, it was. He's right. I mean, you know, we lived in Mill Hill, North London, and my dad, I think, put up racing drivers who were sort of nowhere to stay, or they didn't want to put up pay for the money for a hotel or something, or there was a party going on. But so yes, you know. That was all, you know, genuine. Jackie would race, and other racing drivers would pass through and be kept up all night, I suppose, by us pesky kids.
Absolutely.
A complete pain in the ass. I mean, it was ridiculous, really. The father and mother just couldn't look after, particularly the young boy. He was very awkward. Never could do anything correctly at that time.
Not enough discipline, Jackie, was there? That's the thing. So one thing you can never accuse my dad of is not being a stern disciplinarian. I mean, he was quite tough at times.
Oh, listen, he was tough. I was the number 2 driver, so I know about the toughness. But at the same time, he was very fair. That was one of the great things about Graham Hill. I mean, he had a little black book where he took all of the setups of every car that he drove, whether it was the Formula One BRM at that time in Formula One. But of course, in those days, racing drivers drove sports cars, GT cars, Indy cars, Can-Am cars, touring cars. And your father used to keep this black book with all the setups, all the settings, everything, you know, and there was no aerodynamics in those days. So there was a lot of mechanical changes. And of course, he was a good engineer before he took up motor racing. So for me, it was the perfect choice. I got the opportunity. Colin Chapman asked if I would drive in Formula One while I was driving Formula 3 at the time, and I won most of the races. And I got an offer from Cooper as well at that time, because Bruce McLaren and people like that were there. But I chose BRM, partially because of Graham Hill, because I thought I would learn more from Graham than I would from Jimmy, because Colin Chapman was Jimmy's golden boy, and there was no second driver that really got the same attention as Jimmy got at Lotus. So I chose BRM, and it was the right decision because I learned so much from Graham. And of course, it was a wonderful team, a really strong family team almost. So I was lucky.
Damon, you know, we talk about camaraderie, but you were a member of the Rat Pack, and still are. You still have your Christmas get-togethers with Martin Brundle and Mark Blundell and the rest of them. Why don't you tell us a bit about that and how that developed over the years?
I think that's probably the closest we got to sensing what it was like in the era of Jackie and Jim Clark and my dad and all the crew in the 60s, because this is the Formula 3 people who made it to Formula 3. And then we subsequently, the point about the Rat Pack is it was people who raced together in Formula 3 and Formula Ford and actually made it to F1. So we all made it to F1. Martin Brundle was already there, as was Derek Warwick and a few others. But most of the people in the Rat Pack now raced against each other in Formula Ford. So we kind of grew up banging wheels, literally, and then ended up, much to our amazement, in Formula One against all the odds, because there was chances of us I didn't have massive sponsors. I didn't have any money. Neither did Mark Blundell. Neither did Perry McCarthy, and Herbert. We just, and Donnelly as well. We just managed to wangle our way through this sport and managed to end up in the plum seats. Incredible.
And of course, this year, a very important year, because it's 25 years since you won the Formula One World Championship. We heard the immortal words from Murray Walker. How are you reflecting on that?
Oh, man, it can't be 25 years. That sounds like an awfully long time, 25 years. It was only yesterday, wasn't it? I mean, I've got pictures to prove it. Look, yes. I haven't changed a bit, have I?
You haven't changed a bit, Damon.
I haven't changed a bit. There you go. There you go. Maybe the hair colour's a bit different.
Have you still got the Goodyear hat?
Yeah, I've got a few souvenirs. But,
of course, whilst Damon was off winning the World Championship, talking of corporate colours, you put your corporate colours onto your own Formula One team, Stewart Grand Prix. Why don't you tell us a bit about the adventure of Stewart Grand Prix that ended in a win in the Nürburgring?
Well, that was probably the biggest challenge that's ever been in the family, Stewart. To start a Formula One race, a team. I mean, it's all Paul's fault, because he wanted to be a racing driver. So I started Paul Stewart Racing, and we developed a whole lot of young drivers, which we called something called the staircase of talent, to bring mechanics, engineers, and everybody within in the commercial side and so forth in, and that taught us how to start Formula One, which I wouldn't have wanted to go into. Paul wanted to go into it, and so did the whole team. So we had to bloody well do it. I mean, it was a nightmare.
That was it was a nightmare. Ford, wasn't it? They sort of came to you and said, "We're not very happy with Sauber. We want to go," and you made some recommendations to them.
I was Ford for 40 years. I was with them, and they called me up and said, "Come to Montreal. There's a Grand Prix there." I was in Detroit at the time. We'll fly up in the corporate plane. We'll have to have a look at the Sauber team. They're not winning for us. They're not doing very well with the Ford engine. Come and tell us what you think. So we got back in the plane. I mean, they had done very poorly. And I said, "Look, you just get out. You just stop Formula One." "Oh, well, I don't think we want to stop Formula One." I said, "Well, why not? You're not winning. You may as well get out." Because Ford Motor Company is a world name. You can't be a back runner and be called Ford. And so they said, in the end, they said, "Would you be interested in starting up a team?" And I said, "No, I certainly wouldn't." And then they said, "Well, what if we finance some of it?" We ended up by doing it. It was a great deal, by the way, but we had to deal with Bernie and Max Mosley, which was a different matter altogether.
Very interested when I was reading your autobiography, Sir Jackie, that when you were putting the drivers together for Stewart Grand Prix in the first year, you say, and I quote, "We needed to find somebody to drive the cars. So Paul and I sat down and drew up a short list of individuals who could meet our three key criteria. They needed to be desirable, available, and affordable. Our first choice was Damon Hill." Why did the partnership?
Son of a bitch said no. We wanted him desperately. We went over to Ireland. He was staying in Ireland at the time, and we flew over in a private plane to see the Damon Hill. Of course, he wasn't there at the time. Should have been, but when he did finally arrive, he wouldn't drive the bloody car. So he went off to go for somebody else. But I've forgiven him.
Add insult, an arrow. You went and drove Damon, an arrow.
I don't mind. I'll take being desirable and available. Okay, that's right. The affordable thing, I just couldn't do that. And
I know. Did we not offer you enough money, Damon?
I know you offered me a very good offer. And actually, I've got to say, it broke my heart to turn Jackie down, because I knew it would have been like a dream thing. But I just thought, career-wise, it would have been a big risk. They had never run a Formula One team before, so I think Jackie would let me off that one, because it's just to jump out of a winning team into a team that's never raced before was a little bit too much of a leap of faith for me, and not that I'd ever doubted that Jackie would pull it off and Paul would pull it off, but I thought, yeah.
I mean, if you'd got a long-term contract, Damon, of about 15 years, you'd have ended up in a Red Bull.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I would have had to hang around an awful long time.
You're a long retainer.
You are forgiven.
Thank you.
Yes. And to be fair, later on in your career with Jordan, Belgium 98, you really marked that lead driver and said, right, it's raining, we're a 1-2.
Yes, that was, well, I'd had, when my first year with Williams, I was number 2 to Alan Prost, very definitely number 2, and I was asked a couple of times to finish behind him. And so I thought, well, okay, now it's my turn. I'm in the Jordan, and I'm leading. I qualified my teammate. I've been leading the race. Come on, let's a bit of payback, perhaps.
Yeah. Tell a Schumacher what to do as well. Not the right one, but
well, it wasn't really telling anyone what to do. It was really the lack of direction from the team, and they'd never won a race before. And I think that anyone in that position would have said, okay, we've got a tricky track conditions. We've got a almost definite 1-2. If we can just not let these two guys behave like idiots. And so my suggestion was, Eddie, why are you not taking control here and saying, please do not race together, because if I have to race in these treacherous conditions, there's a good chance neither of us will finish. That was my message. And it was years later, I was playing golf with Eddie Jordan in Spain, and he said, you said you'd have him in the wall. And I said, I never said that. I did not say that. If that's what you heard, then I'm sorry, you got that completely the wrong end of the stick. But he said, no, you said you'd have him in the, no, I didn't. Anyway, that's what it's like driving for Eddie Jordan.
Yeah.
But it turned out all right in the end.
We went to the British Grand Prix, a Stewart Grand Prix. We had all our major sponsors there. Both cars blew up in the garage.
Oh, right. Very early on then.
Qualifying, we were in the back of the grid. And we had a bunch of really heavy people there. Boy, have you got to work occasion like that.
Yeah.
So
what did you do then to sort of, because I think you talk about this in your autobiography, sort of giving them rather than, the engine's just exploded, it was more about the experience of being a part of the thing.
That very day in the paddock, it was all, we couldn't see each end of the garage. The smoke was so bad. I got them out of there, and I said, the first thing I said, well, I'll show you what we do well. And I took them to the transporters. Now the transporters, as they are today, are immaculate, inside and out. But we used to have, and we were with Goodyear for a while, but we were in Bridgestone really in Formula One. We used to get our trucker to lift up every wheel, turn it so that the tire company's name was at the top, and it was white loaded. So there was black tire, they were painted black, and then the white. And I said, look, Formula One's with attention to detail. This is after both of our cars have exploded. Formula One's very important attention to detail. Look at these wheels, look at these tires, and then come and see the back of the truck. I mean, that was all I had to offer.
I mentioned once in our pre-briefing about the lady in the lift in Canada when I was driving for Arrows. And, I was on my way to the track and she asked me, are you a driver? And I said, yes. And she said, oh, are you going to win the race? We're in the lift going down in the hotel, and she's a fan and she doesn't know anything about motor racing and she doesn't know who I am. And she said, are you going to win the race? I was going, you obviously don't know much. I'm in an Arrows, what a ridiculous question. That's sort of saying to her. And she said, yeah, but you're in the race, right? I said, yeah. And she said, well, you've got a chance, haven't you? Yeah. And I thought, I like that attitude. You know, that's great, but realistically, I haven't got a chance. Anyway, few races later, I was leading the Hungarian Grand Prix in an arrows.
Yeah.
So she was right and I was wrong.
And it goes, and actually, when you reflect on, you know, last year with Sergio Perez and those sorts of things, and obviously, you know, Monaco 96 with Olivier Panis. I know obviously you had to sacrifice yourself for him to be able to win the race.
That wasn't voluntary.
No, it was those engines again, wasn't it? But Renault this time.
Yeah, that's funny how the Frenchman won.
Disappointment can lead to other things. I mean, my biggest disappointment was not driving racing cars, was shooting. I was leading for the position to go to the Rome Olympics for shooting, the Olympic trap. And I screwed up, personally, completely screwed up. Just on one round of 25 targets, I missed 7. And you know, I didn't miss 7 in the previous, you know, 700 and whatever it was. And I thought, what a disaster. It was my birthday also. And I had to drive home, and I thought I was, you know, it was a 2-man team to go to the Olympics. And it was my best year of shooting. I won more big events that year, but I didn't win that particular event to decide on who was going to the World Championship in Rome. And I got home and I was just so fed up with the whole thing. It was then I took up motor racing, because I was a mechanic at that time in the garage. My father had a very small garage, but I was I'm dyslexic. I can't read or write correctly. I'm pretty hopeless at most things. But I was quite a good mechanic. So one of the nicest people I've ever met had lovely cars, and I was looking after them. Other people were racing them, club racing. And suddenly my shooting disappeared. And I went back to the motor racing on the basis of being the mechanic. So being the mechanic, doing it well, keeping the car immaculate, the guy gave me a ride. And I finished second in the first race, won the second race, and like it was a rocket ship. And, you know, from disappointment to the people, isn't very far apart sometimes.
No, I think you need that sting, don't you, Jackie? Sometimes the sting of defeat is actually a really important spur. You know, if it's too easy, then you don't really kind of push yourself.
So Kath won our social media competition to ask you both a question, and it'll be interesting to see your response.
Hi everyone, this is Cas from the Netherlands. Damon, I've been a fan of you since your early days in F1, and you've had a big influence on my life. But it made me wonder, what influence has Jackie had on your life? Did he ever give you any advice that you could use as a racing driver, or maybe more in general, to help you grow as a person? I would really wonder what your thoughts are on this. Oh, and maybe also the other side around. Damon, did you ever give Jackie any advice you could use? Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, cheeky second part to the question. I would never presume to give Jackie any advice at all. Maybe on shaving, that's about it. I mean, you know, what advice can I give Jackie? But Jackie did give me some tremendous advice on an occasion when I was going through a difficult time because of the loss of Ayrton Senna, and I got a call from Jackie and saying, you know, when are you going to go to the funeral? And I was, you know, not in a state where I particularly wanted to go to any funeral. And he said, you will regret it for the rest of your life if you don't go. And so I got on the plane and I went to Ayrton's funeral, and he was absolutely right. I witnessed an extraordinary experience that I will never forget. And not one I'd want to repeat, of course, but it was extraordinary seeing the whole of Sao Paulo come out to honor Ayrton Senna.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Unbelievable event. I mean, I went there too for the day. I in Stirling, actually. No, not with Stirling, not in that one. And I carried him to his last resting place because they got the world champions to do it, and I was one of them. And I'm very glad I went. And I wasn't a close friend of Senna's, but I was a great admirer of him. And in fact, he was very much against me for quite a long time. And then towards the end, he called me up and asked me if I would help him, because he wanted to go and do more about safety in motor racing. And I did go. It was in Australia, in Adelaide, I think it was. And, you know, that built a new relationship. So going to Shuno meant a lot to me.
Well, I think it's time we bring it back to the charities and why we're here today. So Jackie, obviously, Race Against Dementia is a very personal charity to you, and we haven't actually asked, how is Lady Helen at the moment?
Helen, very well. She's now in bed. She gets tired very early after dinner. Dementia's like that. She's much better in the mornings, but she's a long sleeper, as most people are when they have dementia. But she could, if Damon were to pop in at some point, she would have a terrific conversation with Damon, because she'll remember him as the puppy right through to his championships and his experiences, which she sees a lot of him on television today. So she's still very much with us in that respect. She's not walking well. I can't walk at all, really. Now, because of my sport, my business is, I can afford what most people can't afford. We've 7 neuro nurses looking after Helen, 2 at a time, but 24 hours a day. And it's a cruel illness, because it takes an immense out of a family. I mean, we're privileged to be able to have the assistance that we do have, but knowing that currently there is no cure, that's why Race Against Dementia is so important to me. The most important thing I've ever done in my life. And I love, even at my tender years, I would love to see either a cure or a preventive medicine coming from Race Against Dementia. And that's what we're doing. We're paying for young PhDs to be put all over the world to find new ways of doing things. Our association with Formula One is very important, because Formula One is better at problem solving, faster at problem solving than any other business or activity in the world, in my opinion. So that's why I'm so driven to try and make Race Against Dementia the success it needs to be.
And Damon, let's talk about Halo. Obviously, in non-COVID years, Halo runs some fantastic events. Why don't you tell us a bit about those and how people can get involved moving forward, hopefully, when we're all not socially distancing and back at Sandown Park, for example?
Well, we have our fundraising events, which are open to everyone, of course. And so there's the karting, the Damon Hill Karting Challenge. We haven't got a golf day yet, I don't think. I do have a Down syndrome golf day, Damon Hill Classic Golf Day, which is for Down syndrome, but that's a different charity. But and we have the Halo. We have some fantastic guys who are into cycling, and they offered for us to join their cycling event, which they do, which was called the Two Boats Cycling Challenge, and it's become the Halo 250. And basically, we cycle from somewhere in London, usually somewhere around Richmond Park, and then go down to Portsmouth, get on a ferry, and go to St Malo, and then we cycle from St Malo to Caen, which is 120 miles in one day. And we go to Pegasus Bridge, which is where they have the longest day. And it certainly feels like the longest day by the time we get to Pegasus Bridge. The longest day you've ever had in your life. And then we get on a ferry, come back from Caen to Portsmouth. Then we cycle from Portsmouth to Guildford, and we all have a big barbecue. So that's that raises a lot of money. So we're not being up to that. And I have to get on to helping them to reorganize this year's event. We're going to try and still do something this year if we can, but it might stay in the UK. We might not be able to go abroad.
I'm sure on behalf of both the charities, it's a big thank you for people who've attended this evening. I'm sure you guys agree.
I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's signed up for this. So thank you very much indeed. I know Halo are sharing with Dementia, Race Against Dementia and Jackie's charity. So I'm sure he'll say the same. But really grateful to you as well, Nick, for giving us this opportunity. So I hope that all the people out there got their money's worth.
I think they did. Genuinely, I think they did. We are running over. There's no two ways about it. And as I say, thank you from me for you guys getting involved. You've shared it on social media. It's always a real pleasure. So thank you for that. And so Jackie, just any final words from you?
No, I think you've said it all. But a big thank you to you, and thank you, Damon. It's great to do something with you. So I thank you very much, and for this program, and particularly to those who have bought into the program. I hope you've enjoyed it. You've had some good stories there, and there's some still more perhaps to come one day. But thank you for the you might give, and thank you all for inviting me in the first place.
An absolute privilege, and I really mean that.